So welcome back, my dear students. Welcome back, everyone. And this is another lecture in the organization behavior, and we will talk about learning, about the topic of learning. So learning, modification of behavior taking place through observation, training, or practice, that's called learning. So this is the organizational behavior and the learning. Learning means modification of behavior taking place through observation. Training or practice is what is called learning. Learning is the process of having one's behavior modified more or less permanently by what he does and the consequences of his actions or by what he observes. Also, learning is relatively permanent change in behavior. So, learning change the behavior potentially that results from reinforced practice or experience. So if I say as example, I read about cleaning. Someone taught me to clean, how to clean the place. But this I can't say I learn cleaning, except I practice cleaning with my own hand. In that case, learning, because it changed the behavior. So you did something. When you learn something regarding it, then you change your behavior. Characteristics of learning. What are the main characteristics of learning? Learning results in the change of behavior. So this is the most important thing. So if we didn't change our behavior, then we didn't learn. As example for the pray, if a child is taught in the school how to pray, but he didn't practice with his own self praying, that means he didn't learn praying, because learn change in behavior. Okay. The change may be good or bad, who knows? It must be remembered here that a person acquires certain bad habits like smoking or drinking only through learning. So also, like you see, it doesn't mean that learning goes only to the good things, that learning goes, as example, kids who learn how to smoke cigarettes or whatever, or drink, this is a bad habit for them. So they learn bad habit. They practice reinforced behaviorally these kind of behave, but it's negative, not positive. However, they learn it because it changed their behavior, but changed it into worse. The change must be relatively permanent. Behavioral changes caused by fatigue is only temporary and it involves, so the change must be permanent change. It must be a permanent change, not a change relatively or something. A mere change is one's thought process or attitude is not learning. So a mere change in one's thoughts process or attitudes is not learning. It must accompanied by change in behavior as well. So changing in attitudes is not learning. Changes in values or process or thoughts is not learning. But when we can say learning, when it change in the behavior. So learning means change the behavior. Any change in behavior due to aging, illness, injury is not the result of learning. A change in behavior is deemed to be outcome of learning only. It arises out of observation, training, or practice. So these are the sources of learning. But learning, when you become aging, learning accidental, what we call it, like getting changes in the behavior accidental or due to aging, and this change the behavior, this is not kind of learning. This is not learning. But learning is the one which will change your behavior. Again, learning must change the behavior. Any positive changes has to be permanent. So if the change is temporary, then this is not learning. If the change in the behavior is temporary, then this is not learning. Learning when the change takes place and takes time. To achieve permanency, the practice needs to be reinforced, supported, or strengthened. In the absence of reinforcement, the expected behavior will gradually disappear. Learning is a continuous process. It is not something that occurs only during particular stages in one's life. So let us see what are the learning determinants. What are the factors that affect in learning process? The motivations, the qualities of the trainer or the trainee, the feedback which we had, the reinforcement effect on him, and also the environment around us is a determinant. Determinants means one of the factors that affect learning. Practices, yes. Meaningful of the subject. Is it important to me or no? Time schedule also will affect about the learning. Time schedule, like what you're doing, you're studying. So you put for yourself 2 hours daily to study or 1 hour daily study. This is also determinants of learning. So now I will go to some questions. My first question here today is define learning. Define learning. I will adjust it right now. Define learning. My second question, here we go, Control and C. This is define learning. My second question today is, what are the characteristics of learning? What are the characteristics of learning? This is my second question today. The characteristics of learning. What are the characteristics of learning? This is my second question today. And here, the characteristics of learning will be here like this. You'll put here the most important thing that it is. It must be permanent and must be accompanied with a change in the behavior, like what we said. So here we go to, again, I will repeat this parts again. Modification of behavior taking place through observation, training, and practice is what's called learning. Learning, change in the behavior. It is change in the behavior. Change may be good or bad. The change must be relatively permanent. Must be permanent change. A mere change is about thoughts, process, or attitudes is not learning, but it must be learned in the change in the behavior. So if I change your thoughts, this is not learning. Change your behavior, this is learning. And a change in behavior due to aging, illness, or injury is not relearning, but it must be change in a behavior, not because of the change of the behavior, because of the age. No. Any positive change has to be permanent, like what we said before. Learning, finally, is a continuous process. It's not a one-step process, then after this stop, but it is a continuous process. Then what are the determinants of learning? The third question will be, what are the determinants? What are the learning determinants? Determinants means factors affecting. So what are the factors affecting learning? This is the meaning of the question. What are the learning determinants? Determinants. What are the learning determinants? So here we go. Here, the learning determinants. Here, I will put it here. What are the learning determinants? And the learning determinants, as you see here, the motivations, the qualities of the trainer, the feedback, the reinforcement, the determinants of learning, those, the environment, the practices, the meaningful of the, or the importance of the subject. And when you feel the subject is important, you will be eager to learn and practice, and it will change your behavior. Time schedules also for learning will affect about the learning matters. What about the theories in learning? So I will stop here on the previous page here, and I will stop for around 5 minutes to get the answer of these questions. Here we go. We have 3 questions here. What is the learning? Characteristics of learning. And the learning determinants means factors affecting learning. Before we move to the next part in this video. Cool, that's fine. We will go now. So this is define learning, characteristics of learning, and the learning determinants. We'll move into the next point in our own work now. The theories of learning, we have 4 theories of learning. The classical conditional theory, the operant conditioning theory, the cognitive theory, and social learning theory. 4 theories. The classical one, the operant one, conditioning one, the cognitive one, and the learning, social learning theory. Those are theories of learning. Or by other meaning, how we will get the learning. How we will get the learning. So classical conditioning, the classical theory of learning, the credit of developing the classical conditioning theory is given to Ivan Pavlov, Russian psychologist. Learning is the process by which experience or practice results in relatively permanent change in behaviors or potential behaviors. And this is what we want. This is the part which we need. So learning is the process by which the Ivan found that learning is the process by which experience or practice results in a relatively permanent change in behaviors or potential behavior. So when there is change in the behavior, that means we came to learn something. Okay. One thing more here. Classical conditioning is modifying behavior so that conditional stimulus is paired with unconditioned stimulus and elicits an unconditional behavior. So the classical conditional theory is based on Pavlov's experiments to teach a dog to salivate in response to the ringing of the bell. Pavlov offered the dog meat and noticed that the dog was salivating from saliva. Afterwards, without offering meat, he merely rang a bell. The dog hand had no salivation. He merely rang a bell. The dog had no salivation. So there must be a stimuli to change the behavior. There must be a stimuli. Something stimulates you to change your behavior. And this is the core of the learning. At the next step, he rang the bell before giving the dog meat. This went on for some time. Thereafter, Pavlov merely rang the bell without offering meat and noticed that the dog was salivating. The dog thus learned to relate the ringing of the bell to the presentation of meat. So the dog think that whenever he rang the bell, there will be a meat, because once before that he used to ring the bell and give him a piece of meat, so he got the saliva from his mouth. That's the dog. Even though he doesn't have meat and he's still ringing for the ringing the bell, so the dog also still get the saliva, because he was expecting that there will be meat, because for him he has a perception that when the bell ring, that will be accompanied with meat. The classical conditioning theory has some relevances in understanding human behavior in workplace. For example, the employees can link their pay hike to the better financial position of their employer. So I would say, yeah, if my boss is earning well, then he will give me extra money. Yeah. In other words, they expect a hike in the pay when they know that the financial position of the organization is very sound. Sounds so good, so they will think about the. But this classical conditioning theory has certain limitations. For example, it does not explain all the aspects of human learning. The environment in the organization also makes understanding of the human learning difficulties. That was about the classical theory in learning, and that was our own part of work on this curriculum. Shall see you on the next video. Thank you so much. Have a wonderful day.